Hey, this is Frank at Top Shop Auto in Walnut Creek, California, and I'm here to talk to you about trailers. This is Vintage Trailer Boot Camp, and why should you listen to me? Why listen to me about trailers? I've been in the industry since I was 20 years old or so, and I worked at a heavy truck shop, modifying heavy trucks and trailers, building frames, wiring up different apparatus that they needed on the trucks, and then it was a Ford dealership, so working on Ford trucks, heavy truck and light trucks for 15 years, then a multitude of other dealerships, and now I have my own shop here in Walnut Creek, California called Top Shop Auto. And as you can see, if I move this way a little bit, you can see that we work on some vintage cars here too. We actually don't particularly work on trailers here for our customers. Trailers is kind of one of my hobbies here. So I've been restoring and working with vintage trailers probably for the last 15 years or so in different aspects. So I feel that I have something to say about it, and I think that I can help you guys out, get your trailers back on the road. Hey, so we're talking about trailers, and we're talking about what do you want to do with your trailer when you go on the road. So the first thing I do every time I go on the road, and I'm going to kind of cover some of the simple stuff first. It may be stuff you've already heard before, but it's always good to hear again. So the first thing I do with my trailers before I go on the road is I kind of do an overall safety check. So it's kind of like you hear people that fly in airplanes do this a lot, but just walk all the way around the trailer and look for things that are different. So is the trailer leaning? Do the tires look the same from side to side? Does anything look different about the hitch or the chains or the pins in the back or your lights in the back? Is there anything that's changed on your trailer since you last saw it? And I also, of course, look at open windows and skylights and stuff like that, so I don't mess up any of the windows or anything that's open on the trailer going at 60, 70 miles an hour. Shouldn't be driving 70 miles an hour. But so the first thing I do is do a really good safety check. That includes sticking your head underneath and looking underneath to see if anything's fallen off or dragging. If you see anything strange. I'm going to go a little bit more into the different aspects of the trailer here later on in a more thorough inspection. But that's every time you drive your trailer. And then as soon as you have your trailer hooked up and you're getting in your vehicle, you want to check to make sure that your hitch is latched and your chains are on. Those are the two biggest things, because you don't want the trailer to disconnect. So that's a huge thing in this process. So getting down the line in what we're talking about, I'm going to talk about bearings, because bearings are one of the next most important part of the trailer. This is a really big bearing. This is a overblown example of a trailer bearing. This is actually a pinion bearing, actually for a Toyota Land Cruiser. But what I like is it's big and I can really show you guys what's going on. So if you're packing your bearings and replacing your seals or just tightening your bearings, this is what the bearing in the race looks like. Now on a trailer, this race is pressed into the hub, and then this bearing goes on the spindle. And so this, if you imagine, this would be your hub and your brake drum in some cases, and then the bearing sits on the spindle, and this is what rolls along as your trailers go on at speed. Now you want them this clean, rattly clean when you clean your bearings before you pack them. And the reason why you need them this clean is you need to look at the inner race in between the rollers and the inside, and I kind of turn it like this, and I look with a light behind it so I can see if there's any pitting or galling or scoring inside that race. So that's how you check your bearing. You also kind of look and see, does all the rollers look like they're the same and they don't have pitting or scoring? And then also, this is a good bearing, or actually it has a little bit of wear on it, but it's not falling apart. The rattle's not too bad. If everything's kind of loose, you're best getting new bearings. And then this is a race. This race actually is getting a little bit of scoring and pitting in it. Possibly it saw a little bit of water or something like that. You can kind of see it on the outside edges around here. So those are some of the things you want to look on your bearings. Now, as far as installing your bearings and installing your seals, I'm not going to go over the whole procedure for that. My friends at eTrailer.com have amazing videos on packing, replacing seals, adjusting your bearings, and getting it right. And you can play that video over and over and over and over again until you get it right. The biggest thing is you don't want a lot of play in the bearing. So if you have play in the wheel bearings, then your hub goes like this and kind of bounces around, and that chips little pieces of chrome off the bearings. And if you have it too tight, they'll start gulling and scoring, and you don't want that either. So there's a certain adjustment that you're looking for on this for them to spin freely going down the road. So that's about everything I'm going to say about bearings. Now, the next thing we talk about is springs and axles. And I have some springs here from my Aeroflight trailer behind me, and I'm rebuilding these springs. These springs are actually in really good shape, even though they have rust in them. The rust is just surface rust, so we're going to clean them up. We actually have some soaking in some rust remover here. If you want to look in that box there, we've got our springs soaking in some rust remover. And I'm going to be building these springs back up into springs. Now, when these springs are on your trailer, you're looking, these are the grease zerks. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can sell this one part right here. This is a shackle. The one end of the shackle is actually frozen. So see how I can't move it. So you put grease in here, and if it doesn't take grease, you need to take them all apart. And when you take them apart, this is what you see inside. So the grease goes in here, and it comes out a hole in the middle of the shaft. Now, if that hole's plugged, then the grease doesn't get in the zerk, and they get locked up like this. Now, this trailer had been sitting for a very long time, so I'm going to take them all apart, clean everything up. They're in perfectly good shape. I'll grease everything up. It'll be fine. So this goes right down the center of the spring eye like that. There's a little center bolt, and if you have this is a 1947 trailer I'm rebuilding. If you have a very old trailer, I like to replace the center bolt, because if the center bolt breaks, all these leaves come apart like this, and you don't want that to happen when you're going down the road. So now, when you're looking at springs, whether they're on the bench like this, I'll kind of move this piece of frame here. If they're on the bench like this, or they're on your trailer, you want to look for separations in the springs. So that means normally that a spring is cracked. So you really want to look around for cracked springs. And you might not even know you have a cracked spring. Sometimes you notice it looking at, like, remember when I was saying, look at the sides of your trailer, are both sides the same height? Sometimes when you crack a spring, your trailer will sag to one side. If it's sagging to one side, there's a reason for that. This trailer was sagging to one side because this shackle is locked up, because the shackle wouldn't swing all the way. That's also making it so that the spring can't articulate. So if the spring moves up and down, the shackle can't articulate with the spring. And at some point, that's going to ruin the frame, possibly crack the mounting for the spring onto the frame. So springs, really good thing to look at. If you have a double axle or single axle, you can't run your trailer with anything broken on the spring assembly. It's not going to work. Now, people have asked me a lot on the springs, and I don't think I have them on the trailer outside, but some of the springs at the very bottom of these plates, this is a spring plate or perch plate. Sometimes I'll have a big spring down here on the bottom, and they ask me, what the heck is that spring for? Now, I have another trailer that has that big spring, and one of them is worn down, and what happens on a single axle trailer is that little, it's kind of a U-shaped thing, will hit the ground if you get a flat and keep your trailer under control so it doesn't sway back and forth. So it's good to leave those on there if it has them. I might even put something like that on these. This is a single axle trailer, so I might put one on these springs, just so that if I get a flat tire, my trailer doesn't lean all the way over and possibly roll or sway. So that's what, if you got a curlicue thing on the bottom of your spring, that's what that is. So I'm going to move along to the hitch. So I have a hitch here. You can come around this way. Now, there's all sorts of different kinds of hitches. You should always stick with the hitch that is rated for your trailer. Now, a lot of you aren't going to be changing out your hitch. This is the new frame that we're putting under this Aeroflight, and it was a pop-up tent trailer. And so it has a, I think it's a 3,300 pound rating on the hitch. I'm rebuilding this trailer up a little heavier, so we've got a higher rating on this hitch, but this is still a 2-inch ball. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked underneath your hitch, but when the pin's up and the ball's in there, the ball gets snapped in with this lever here. And when it's locked and you put your hitch pin in, the ball is captive and it can't come out. And then when you take your pin out and you open up the hitch like this, now it releases and your ball can come out. So this is probably the most important part, besides the springs and the bearings, of your trailer staying to the back of your truck so you don't lose your trailer. So this needs to stay lubed. All these pieces need to be checked. It is adjustable. This one is. This one you can adjust it tighter. If it gets too loose, if it gets worn and loose, you can adjust it so it's a little tighter on the ball. Some of the old ones may not have an adjustment on them on the bottom. We'll look at the hitch that's out in this trailer outside here in a little bit. Now the pin, you can put, this is a pin in the unlock position. And that's the lock position. You want to put your pin on every time and make sure that's on there, right? Some people I've seen paint these bright orange, or they put a big red, like you can get those long keychain red things on it, so that you can glance and you know you put your pin in, so you can see the red hanging down. This is a hitch that's going to go on this trailer. We're going to, like I said, we're going to build this. We're going to build it up a little bigger than this particular hitch here. The Aeroflight weighed about 2,500 pounds when it was brand new with an aluminum frame, but now it has a steel frame, and we're adding some more framing to it. Probably looking at somewhere around 4,500 pounds loaded when we're done. So I'm speccing out all my new parts based on that weight instead of the 2,500 pounds that it used to be. So the ball on the hitch, we'll go over here and we'll actually go over here and get a ball, because I forgot to put it on the table. And you can look at some of the stuff in the rest of the shop. This is what you want your ball to look like. So you want the chrome not to be scuffed out. You can see a little bit of scuffing on this ball. That's not bad. But if you start going through the chrome into the steel, you need a new ball. So if your ball starts to wear out, and then all the ratings for the balls are on the top. This says what size the ball is. You got to make sure your hitch and the ball size match, and those should both be written on the hitch and the ball. This is a 6,000 pound ball. Do not exceed the weight limit on your ball. Balls can break. The shank on the bottom is made for a certain amount of weight. And then when you're tightening up these big nuts, there is a certain amount of pressure that you want to put on there. Basically, if you collapse, this is kind of a rule of thumb, but if you collapse this lock washer and you come all the way down, you probably need about 100 to 120 pounds on this nut to keep it on there, so it doesn't move around. So. And if you guys have any questions, you can always ask questions on the forum when you're watching the video, and I'll answer as many as I can, or I may come back later and answer questions as we go. Okay, so now we're going to get to the frame. So one of the reasons why this Aeroflight is getting a new frame is this is the old frame. This is an aluminum frame. And as you can see, this is what it used to look like on this side. But the frame saw some salt water and exploded. So when you're checking your frame, whether it's an aluminum frame like this one or a steel frame like this one, you're looking for nice welds, no cracks, and you're looking at the whole frame. So when you're inspecting the frame, you want to go end to end. Normally, frames like this crack on the welds. That is normally where they crack. The other place that they normally crack is at the spring landings, where the springs are mounted onto the frame. That's where a lot of the impact points and the vibration happens. If one of the edges on the frame crack or the main bar cracks, then the frame will start waving like this and not be stable at speed at all. So you really want to pay attention to your frame. Now, cracks can be fixed, and normally what you do is you take a good piece of steel and you almost like a Band-Aid, you splint in good steel over the bad steel, and it has to be welded back in place and then splinted as well. And there are certain ways to do it. Now, unless you're a professional welder, I would leave it to a professional welder and find a trailer shop or a good welding shop to take care of that for you. If you know how to weld and you know how to splice up frames, there are a bunch of rules that go with it. Again, go to YouTube or something and watch some people do it before you ever attempt to do that. There's a bunch of different things you have to do with the thickness of the metal, the type of welding you do, how to cool the metal and how to heat up the metal. There's a bunch of different processes, and then the type of welding equipment you're going to use to do it. So only if you're a professional welder should you be doing stuff like that. If it's an aluminum frame, you don't weld the frame at all. You replace it. So there's nothing you can do. Now, frames get rust on them. This is a rust-free California frame, so it's never seen the salt from back east or anything like that. Surface rust on frames is just fine. You can have all the surface rust you want. In fact, we're gonna go out to my other trailer now, and we're gonna take a look at this other trailer because it has a little bit more rust, but it's in really good shape. So this trailer is a 1958 Santa Fe, and we're just prepping it actually to sell it. Or I am. This is more my deal than the shop's deal. But if you zoom in to the frame here, you can see some surface rust inside the frame there. So that surface rust is perfectly fine. There's no reason to get alarmed. You can clean it, you can paint it, you can do whatever you want to it. I'm going to leave that particular rust. I'm just going to paint the stuff that I can see right now. So that's fine. Now, if you end up getting rust where you can stick your finger through the hole, or big chunks of frame are falling off, or you see this nice edge. If you don't have a nice edge like that on your frame, if it's rusted away, then your frame is too rusty and you should be looking at probably replacing the frame at that point. So, and if you look at the welds in the frame on this particular trailer, you know, this is a little bit of a messy weld on the extension wheel, but it's fine. Everything else looks just great on this trailer, you know, on the frame. So I did not address any frame issues on this. I did just clean, lube up the springs, pack the bearings, and kind of go from there. And then I'm working my way from the outside in. So if you have a doubt about your frame on your trailer and if it can do the job that you want it to do, you need to go to a professional trailer shop and talk to them about it. Now this is an axle. This is actually the axle for the Aeroflight. This is kind of what your axle looks like. This is a drop axle. And I'm not going to be using this axle because it has 6-volt brakes, and I want some real 12-volt brakes on my axle. And I can't get the parts to repair the brakes or to change them over to 12 volts. So this axle is actually getting picked up. I sold it tonight. The guy that's making just a roll-around trailer, he's not going to be using the brakes. So, but this is what the axle looks like. This is a 1947 Aeroflight trailer axle. And that axle has a 4-inch drop. So if you do have to replace your axle, you want to get exactly the same axle. If you don't, then you're kind of taking some engineering in on your own. So the height of the trailer and the drop of the axle and where the spring lands and the way that they built the frame and the way they built the whole trailer is all contingent on that axle and the height of the trailer and the tires that it takes. So whenever you change your wheel size or your tire size or your axle drop or your spring rate, or you put the axle on top or below the springs, the trailer is going to handle differently. So you just got to pay attention to what you're doing on that. And again, go see a professional trailer shop if you are modifying something and you wonder about it. or you can always call me up or ask us, and we can tell you. So, okay, so the next part is nuts, screws, and bolts. Now, what holds your trailer together? It's a bunch of screws and bolts. Now, old trailers have little tiny flathead screws all over the trailer. I'm sure that you've been swearing at them on your trailer. These are the bolts that hold your trailer together. So these are the carriage bolts that hold the bottom plate of the wall to the frame on your. This would be a stick trailer, not an aluminum trailer, but one made out of wood. So this is the subfloor. This is the casement or the bottom board on the wall. Outside aluminum, inside wall, and then this is just more boards like you'd have framing around your window and stuff. But these bolts go through here onto your frame, and they have a square part that goes into the wood here. Now, if this bolt gets rusty and starts to spin, you can't tighten this nut up on the bottom because the top spins because the wood is starting to rust out. So you really want to pay attention to these nuts and these bolts that they don't start looking like this. So these are actual nuts and bolts that we've taken out of a trailer that looked a lot like the one we just saw. And the wood in here collects water, and the water rusts the bolt. So as these pieces of wood get impregnated with water and they start to rot, this is what happens to the bolts. So if you start not being able to tighten your bolts, or you see any kind of corrosion and rust like this, or like this is kind of what you normally see on a trailer, you need to do something about that. You can't take your trailer camping like that. So if the wood's not in that bad a shape, you can just replace the bolts, and then you can even give it some new wood on top or on the bottom, depending on where it's rotted out, or if you just have a little bit of rot. But you need to pay attention to these bolts and keep them in. Now, a lot of trailers are stapled. These are staples. Sometimes all the staples fall out. If you see a bunch of staples that have fallen out of your siding, you need to replace those with screws. And then if you see some screws that are loose and falling out, it's always good to replace them with the next size screw up. So if it's a number 2 screw or number 3 screw, go with a number 4 or number 5 in order to get some bite into the wood. If you can't get bite into the wood, you have wood rot. And if you have wood rot, then your trailer needs more work than probably you're doing at the moment. You're going to have to down the trailer and take the skins off and fix the rot. So, and then the subfloors, if they rot out, you can replace certain parts of subfloor to get these bolts back in order and everything like that. You can take part of your trailer apart and replace just, if like a window was above this and it was rotting out the wood, you can just replace that one part. It's a little bit more technical. You can peel this skin back and do your work and then put it back. And you can splice in parts of wood and you can scab in pieces of wood underneath. So there's always something you can do to repair them. But go around your trailer and pay attention to your nuts and bolts and screws and make sure everything's tight and nothing's rattling out. Some screws on old trailers do just rattle out when you're traveling. I have some that I put back in on a regular basis. And at some point I do need to make that into a bigger screw to try and catch some more wood or some more metal that it's going into. Okay, so tires. So the first question I always get from people about trailer tires is, do you have to have trailer tires? Yes, you have to have trailer tires. You can't use car tires, you can't use truck tires. They're a different kind of tire. They're rated for a different kind of driving. They're made for turning and accelerating on a car or a truck. Trailers are meant to track. And they also have different camber and tow aspects to keep the trailer tracking behind your vehicle. They also have a lot of plies in the sidewall, which helps hold the trailer at the right weight rating and keep it from swaying when the sidewall, so there's less sidewall flex. So on your car, there's more sidewall flex to make a better ride. In your trailer, they're pretty stiff tires. Most of the ride is coming out of the springs, not the tires. So on a passenger car, a lot of the ride is coming out of the tires and the sidewall is flexing. On a truck, a little bit less. So you want to get a good set of trailer tires. There are cheap ones, there are expensive ones. It's just like when you're buying tires for your car or your truck. The more money you spend, probably the better tire you're going to get, and the longer they're going to live, and the better use or the better tracking you're going to get out of your trailer. So now the biggest thing, again, on tires is how old are your tires? So the kind of the rule of thumb is 7 years, you should start replacing your tires. So if they get 7 years old. Now in trailer time, that's only a few minutes, basically. Because 7 years goes by quickly when you have a trailer, especially if you're not using it a lot, and you look at the tread, and you're like, well, the tread looks brand new. Now the last part of the DOT number is the year. So look at the last part of the DOT number, and if it says 00, it's a 2000. If it says 14, it's a 2014. If it has a weird code that you don't understand that doesn't have a year right there, then it's even older than that, and it was the old DOT numbers before 2000. So those really need to be replaced. So always look for cracks, look for sun damage, look at your tread. Old vintage trailer tires probably never wear out. So you're not going to see your tread wear down unless you're having a big problem with your axle. Now that leads me into the next part, which is when you're looking at your tire, and I'm going to use this Mustang rim, for example. You want to look for wear. So if you've got one trailer tire that has good tread all the way across, and the other one is worn off on one side, you've probably got a bent axle. If your tire looks like this, where the tread is worn out in the middle, and you still have tread on both sides, you've been overinflating your tires. So that means you're kind of making a dome and a bubble out of this tire, and you're putting too much air in them. So that's no good either, because most of the traction is only in this little spot in the middle of the tire. You're not using the outside as for traction. What you want is you want even wear throughout the tire so that you have the most traction you could possibly get out of this tire. Now on the other end of the air pressure thing, if it's worn out on the edges, but the middle has tread, then they're underinflated. And also when they're underinflated, sometimes you'll see stress cracks along through here because the sidewall gets hot and starts getting cracks. So I hope that helps you out on tires. This is a bad tire. I wouldn't run this tire anymore. This is too little of tread. So this is the spare tire for this Mustang, so I don't think they're doing anything with it. But if in doubt, go to a professional tire shop. We are a tire shop here at Top Shop Auto in Walnut Creek also, so we can get all the tires you'd ever need for your cars, trucks, and trailers. So now rims and lugs. Your rim, I guess I can go back to this rim here. You want to see concentric holes in your rim so that the lugs fit nicely into these holes. If you have any wear or abnormality or these are elongated, you want to get a different rim. Also, your hub centers on this center piece here. This should match your hub on your trailer. So if you have the wrong wheel on there, then this hub won't sit in the middle of the rim, and you'll have play, and it actually puts more stress on the lugs and the lug nuts. So you want a matching rim that goes with your hub that's on your axle, and preferably the one that was built for it. So there are different ratings to rims and tires, and if you are changing the size or the rim on your tire, you want to make sure that you're staying within the specs of your trailer and how much it weighs. And if you want to know how much your trailer weighs, go weigh it. Go to a truck scale and weigh your trailer. Just see when it's loaded with all your stuff in it, how much does it weigh? Now, going back to tire pressure, I have people ask, well, how do I know when I have the right amount of tire pressure in my trailer? Because a lot of trailers don't have any spec for tire pressure. If you buy a little heat gun, they have them at any of the car parts places, you're looking for an even temperature across the surface of the tire. So if you've been running a couple hours on your trailer and you have an even temperature all the way across, then you're running the right amount of air pressure. If it's too hot in one spot, then that's where you're running the most on it. So if it's underinflated, it'll be hot on the edges. If it's overinflated, it'll be hot in the middle. So now as far as lug nuts, the lug nuts have to be in good shape. If they start to catch it all on the threads, you want to get some different lug nuts. If they start to wear out and be hard to get on and off, you want to get some new lug nuts. They also make thread chasers for the lugs on the axle, so you can clean those up, and you want them really clean, and you want to be able to put those nuts on really well without any burrs or anything that doesn't let the nut go in snugly. If you think you have a bad nut or one bad nut, you can replace that one stud. They do hammer out of the axle or the hub, and then you can put a new stud back in. You always want at least 2 or 3 threads coming out on the other end of the nut. So when you put your nut on, I'll kind of pretend that this is the nut, and this could be the bolt on the axle. You want to have about that much going out, so you have enough stud to hold your wheel on. If you can see threads in your nut like that, then it's no good. So you always want to have a full grip of the nut on the stud, and that's on any stud. Even like this is actually a nut for these. It's the same thing for any bolt or stud. You don't ever want to just have a bunch of thread that you can see inside the nut and just barely holding on, because this is going to fail. So. Okay. So chains. So what is the deal with trailer chains? Chains are rated for the weight of the trailer in case you have a problem with your hitch. These are very small chains. So I will be using a bigger chain, but probably for a little tent trailer, this was going to be just fine. Now, your chain has to be long enough so that when you turn sharply, it doesn't bind up. And the only way to find that out is to turn sharply when you have everything hooked up and see if they bind up. But you also don't want them to drag on the ground and get worn out. Now, some people do twist the chains like this to make them shorter so they don't grind on the ground. The chain is weak that way. So if you're doing it just to move the trailer home or something, that's fine. But if you're going to have that trailer towed by that vehicle on a continuous basis, what you want to do is you want to have the chain the right length. And so just cut it so it fits your vehicle. If you tow it with multiple vehicles, you can have different chunks of linked chain and these little connectors, and you can make the chain longer or shorter for different vehicles. So that's just fine too. Make sure that the chain rating is about twice what your trailer is. So if your trailer is 3,000 pounds, you want 6,000 pound chains. If it's 2,000 pounds, you want 4. If it's 10,000 pounds, you want 20. So you want some really good chains on the back, and you can't go wrong with too big of a chain either. So it's fine. Now normally, some people hook them up with just these little couplers onto the hitch. So normally, I have to go over the car, but normally the hitch has a place to hook the chains onto, and we can actually go over. We'll go over to a car over here. I can show you. So on the hitch, you want to make sure that it loops all the way over and it's not going to fall off. And so if you have a hook, you want to make sure the hook has a catch eye to make it so it doesn't rattle and fall off. If you're using the little couplers like I was showing you before, those you screw on tight and they're not going to fall off. So, and you want to make sure that when you have your hitch pin in here holding your hitch on, that the chain isn't binding up with the hitch pin, and it's not going to either ruin the chain or the hitch pin. Now the other part on the trailer is a lot of you guys, if you have electric brakes, you're going to have a safety cable, which I think this one doesn't have anything like that. Well, maybe it did. Possibly it was in here, right here. So this one had a pin that pulled out of here, and when the pin pulls out, it applies the brakes. So when the pin made the contacts go together inside here, 12 volts either on a battery on the trailer, which is better because if your trailer disconnects, you've still got 12 volts. So if you have a battery that's in the trailer or on the trailer and 12 volts goes through here to the brakes, the trailer's going to stop wherever it fell off your car, which is good. If you don't have safety brakes or you don't have a safety pull pin on your trailer, then your trailer is going to keep rolling until it stops. Hopefully your chains will stay connected. Now, I did have a friend that was pulling a trailer, and he actually had a Duesenberg in his trailer. It was a car trailer, and he was driving a motorhome, and the entire hitch fell off the back of his motorhome. So when the hitch fell off, he had put the little safety cord that turns on the brakes, he had put it on the hitch, but the whole hitch fell off with the trailer and the coupler and everything. So nothing stopped, and he saw his Duesenberg and his car trailer pass him on the freeway. So luckily, it's a good ending to the story. It rolled into some farmland, into a field, and nothing happened. It took down a fence, and that was it. But what you want to make sure is when you hook up that safety cable, that it's not just going where the chains are, that it actually goes to the car, maybe the car frame, or a part of the car that's not going to fall off with the hitch, maybe the bumper, or next to the license plate bolt, or something like that. And that'll make it so that everything comes to a stop at some point. So chains, very important to have them hooked up, very important to get them right, and to keep checking them all the time, make sure they're okay. So speaking about trailer brakes, modern trailer brakes and modern trailer brake controllers have come a long way. And again, go to eTrailer.com and you can look at a multitude of different kinds of trailer brake controllers. The old-fashioned ones go underneath the dash, and they have a little sliding rail that you can adjust how much brake pressure you get to the brakes, and it turns on and off with foot pressure on your brake pedal in the car. And then it runs 12 volts back to the brakes and turns on the brakes in the vehicle. Now, a lot of modern controllers are Bluetooth or remote control, and I prefer that right now. I think that technology has caught up enough that that works really well. Some of them, all you need is your iPhone. So the iPhone will actually apply the brakes, and you can see what your brake status is, and you can see if you're hooked up correctly. You can see how much brake pressure, you can adjust how much brake pressure is coming through when you put on the brakes. And a lot of these sensors have a motion sensor in the controller, and it mounts on the trailer frame. So it knows the characteristics of the trailer and what's going on. And some of them even have a safety so that if the trailer did come disconnected from the car, it's going to stop the trailer on its own with that controller. So look at all the different kinds of controllers. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just make sure that your trailer brakes are working properly. As far as adjustment on the brakes, you want it so that the trailer brakes come on a little before the car brakes. So you want the trailer to stay behind you. So if the trailer comes on a little bit before, then your car always stays in front. If your car brakes come on first and your trailer isn't braking, it's going to come around on the back of the vehicle. So just make sure that when you have them adjusted, they come on a little bit before. Now lights and the lighting wires to your vehicle, going back to your trailer, this is a 4-pin connector. And 4-pin is just fine if you're not running trailer brakes. This doesn't accommodate trailer brakes. This accommodates your turn signals, any brake lights. This also doesn't accommodate a charge wire to charge your rig. So if you're like me, I like all the modern conveniences in my vintage trailers. I wire it up for 12 volts and I put a battery in there and everything so I can enjoy the trailer. So this would be on a very simple trailer where you're just running the lights and you're not charging. And then if we go over here back to the Oldsmobile, this is my tow rig for my trailer. This has a 7-pin plug, and it's tucked up under here. So this 7-pin plug can accommodate the charge wire, the brake wire, all the turn signals, and it even has another wire for like reverse lights or a camera or anything else you want to run. So it's kind of nice, it's versatile, and it's the same on all vehicles. So you can plug your vehicles between other vehicles, you can tow with another vehicle, and your trailer is going to work properly. So it's good to have your wires done right so that your brake lights and your turn signals turn on at the right time and people can see you're getting over. I don't know if you've ever had no brake lights on a trailer, but nobody will let you over because nobody knows you want to get over. So it's really hard. So as far as wiring to the back of the trailer, when I wire old trailers and trailer lights, I do redundant grounds. Now, old trailers and old trailer aluminum, that's where they were getting the ground for all the lights. It's not a very good ground. So what I do is I run a ground wire from the front of the trailer to a bus bar to the middle of the trailer to a bus bar, and to the back of the trailer with a bus bar. And then I run a ground from each one of my housings on my lights to that ground bus bar, so that I know that 100% I have a good ground on the trailer lights. So my brake lights, my running lights, everything has a ground. And then I duplicate that ground to everything that I put inside the trailer that's electrical. So all my 110, all my 12-volt electrical, all has the same ground bus bar going through the whole trailer. It is out to everything that runs. Later on, you're going to thank yourself for that because you'll have less problems when you're on the road. So if you know all your grounds are solid, then you're limited to, hey, I blew a fuse or something like that, or you have a bad bulb, instead of rewiring your whole vehicle when you're sitting in the campsite. So grounds are really important, especially on vintage trailers, and don't be scared to run too many of them. So let's go see what's next on the list here. Yeah, we talked about the 7-pin connector and the 4-pin. Now your tow rig. Now everybody's wondering, can I tow, like if we go out here, I'm going to bring this sheet with me. We'll go out here and see what's towing this Santa Fe trailer out here. So this Santa Fe trailer probably weighs about 3,000 pounds. If my wife was going with all her stuff, it'd weigh about 3,500 pounds. So what we have in the front is we have a 4-cylinder Jeep Wrangler. I probably wouldn't do this. I wouldn't tow this. I'm using this vehicle right now to get this vehicle around the yard so that I can paint it. But this 4-cylinder Jeep doesn't really have enough brakes or enough engine to tow this trailer around. Definitely not to go up in the mountains. You could maybe do flat ground, but then if you were in an emergency situation, I think this would be under braked. So, and if, like, let's say your trailer brakes failed, you know, this trailer currently doesn't have any trailer brakes wired up, and I'm probably going to leave that to the new owner, I believe. So it would be too little of a vehicle to do it. Now, this 54 pickup truck, I have towed quite a bit, a trailer this size, and it works really, really nice doing it. This weighs about 4,700 pounds, whereas this Jeep weighs about 3,500 pounds. And this has a lot heavier engine. I still would want to load up the back of the bed to keep the rear tires on the ground so that the trailer will track right. So if you ever jackknife in a car, it means you lost traction with your rear wheels. So if your trailer starts swaying and you lose traction on your rear wheels, that's when you jackknife. So you want to make sure that the vehicle that you're towing with is loaded properly in the back and that the trailer is loaded properly in the front. When you load your trailer, you want 80% of your weight in the front and then the rest in the back. So you want to keep it kind of in front of the axle. If you have a double trailer, a double axle trailer, you want to put a lot of weight over the wheels and then a little more weight in the front than the back. So now, if you're having trouble with swaying and stuff on a trailer or trouble in the wind, there's all sorts of sway control devices that you might want to look at to make this work. It doesn't take the place of the proper tow vehicle though. So you can't use sway control equipment and stuff like that to try and make a small vehicle tow a big trailer. The kind of a rule of thumb is don't try not to tow something that's heavier than you. In some aspects that does happen when you're towing trailers, but normally that's in a big truck situation where you've got a lot of weight, you got a lot of wheels on the ground, and the truck is rated for that kind of weight. So some of the big long excursions and Suburbans can tow more than what they weigh, but they're rated and they're made to do that. So it's a different kind of thing. Make sure you split up what you carry in your trailer with what you're towing. So put some in your rig and put it in your trailer so that you kind of spread the weight out. Don't put everything in the trailer or everything in the truck. And then remember that in your trailer, water weighs a lot. So when you load up your water or you load up something, your trailer's going to weigh more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about driving with the trailer. I know that some of you have been driving on a trailer for a long time, and some of you probably just started getting into the trailer thing. When you're driving with a trailer, you have to keep it as smooth as possible, and you don't want to do any jerky motions. You don't want to stop too abruptly. and you actually can't stop that abruptly. And then you really want to do defensive driving, so you're looking at the road in front of you and you're planning where you're going to go next and who's going to go where next. It's kind of like I ride a motorcycle too. It's kind of like riding a motorcycle. You have to be very aware of your environment. And if you're going to miss an exit or something's going to happen, just miss the exit and come back. Don't try to make something or try and change lanes quickly. It's not going to work out. And if you feel anything different when you're towing a trailer, stop and check. Now, I stop and check normally every few hours when I'm towing anyway, or maybe right after I hook up a new trailer, I stop and check. I check the hubs to see how hot they are. So if you should be able to put your hands on the hubs. If you have hubcaps, you should just put your hand on the rim and you shouldn't burn yourself. So if you're burning yourself, then you've got a bearing problem or something like that. You want to look and just kind of walk around the trailer like you did when you started off. Just check and make sure everything's where you put it. Everything's back. Everything looks normal. Your chains are still on. There's nothing dragging. No windows have blown out or anything. And then also when you're driving a trailer, they're in different states, there's different lanes you can be in. So pay attention to what lane. Almost all the time in any state you can't be in the fast lane. Normally it's the farthest lane to the right and or the 2 lanes to the right that you can drive in. So just pay attention to that. And then when you're backing up, or if you're paying attention to the tires or the trailer parts while you're driving, they make now little Bluetooth cameras that you can get for your phone, and you can stick them around your trailer and you can see behind you, you can see in front of you. If you don't have a camera to back up, always have a spotter. Backing up trailers is kind of an art, and it's hard to do. And don't feel bad if you can't do it. Just get help. Don't destroy your trailer on a tree or a fence or something like that if you can't get it parked. Some of the campsites get pretty tight and there's a lot of traffic. So just take your time, go easy. Remember, you're normally on vacation when you're driving your trailer, so you shouldn't be in a hurry. Everything should be kind of relaxed. So now remember, on your tow vehicle, and this just goes for good driving, and this is what I tell my customers at Top Shop, is make sure to check your air in your tires on your tow vehicle and your air on your tires in your trailer. And then make sure you have all the fluids and stuff in your trailer. There's a lot more stress on the vehicle when it's towing. And the tow vehicle has to be in really good shape to handle that stress in a long period of time. So everything has to be working properly on the tow vehicle. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of problems towing your trailer, and especially if you're going up the mountains or going down the hills and stuff like that. So I hope this all helps you out, and I'll see you later on at boot camp. I do have another class coming up on tow vehicles and vintage tow vehicles and modern tow vehicles. So you can always check that one out too. So Frank here at Top Shop Auto, Walnut Creek. Take care. Okay, so what now? What do you do now? You have all those information and you've gone to Vintage Trailer Boot Camp. How do you get a hold of me? Where do you go if you need your vintage truck or car repaired at Top Shop Auto? Well, we have a website, and I'll turn my back here. You can see that. And that is where you will find myself and my crew here in Walnut Creek. If you have questions or anything, always drop us a line. Our email can be found on the website as well. And again, this is Frank Powell with Top Shop Auto in Walnut Creek. See you later.